What's going on, everybody? RJ Ochoa here from SB Nation's blogging theboys.com. Hope all is well wherever you are. Hope you're happy, safe, healthy, and that the Dallas Cowboys don't have you down too bad. I know it's a rough time, a rough season, one of the roughest, and that's exactly what we're here to talk about today. But I hope that you're having a great start potentially to your Thanksgiving holiday, your Thanksgiving weekend, your Thanksgiving celebrations, whatever the case may be. It is still the best time of the year, and I hope that it is treating you kindly. If you haven't yet already, please consider subscribing to the Blog of the Boys YouTube channel. We're trying to get to 30,000 subscribers. I was hopeful that this season would be not necessarily successful, but interesting enough to where it would help us out. But if you haven't yet, please subscribe. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, Instagram, or Threads, you can do so at RJ Ochoa. You can do so on TikTok, rj.ochoa. rj.ochoa at sbnation.com is how you email me. You can also leave a comment down below. Also, I don't know the handle, my handle on Blue Sky. What is it called? I don't know if it's called a handle, but if you want to follow me, rjochoa.thesky.social. I don't know if I'm speaking in the proper vernacular, but either way, you know how to find me. You know where to find me. You've obviously found me here today talking about the Dallas Cowboys. In the last video I had here on the channel was the post-game show that my dad and I did. I went to the game on Monday night against the Houston Texans and had a great time with my dad, my best friend. It was a lot of fun, obviously, just kind of experiencing things. And so many of you were very kind in sending messages about how that's what really matters. And I hope that disposition has been what you've leaned on, obviously, throughout the course of this season, because we're going to need to bottle that up and hold on to it for 7 more games. In lieu of a preview show this week, because it is kind of a hectic time and different time, and I'm going to be straight up with you, doing the preview, show that I normally do last week with Stephanie Stradley previewing the Texans game. She and I kind of mentioned it. The Cowboys are at a place where looking at, how are they going to stop Jaden Daniels doesn't necessarily feel like a relevant question, doesn't necessarily feel like something that I think you care about. I think we all understand that this season is somewhat lost. And so, maybe the preview format will return, but I think that in this spot throughout your week, because obviously we have weekly videos that come out here on the channel, which is why you should subscribe. I think it's going to be a little bit more of a topical thing, things that are happening at the moment, because I just don't think that you care. And it's kind of my job to read the room that way. I really don't think you are worried about, how the Cowboys are going to contain Brian Robinson Jr. or something like that. And so in lieu of that today, we're going to be contextualizing just how bad this season is. Not because we're enjoying the the bad season that the Cowboys have been a part of, but because I think it's important. I think it's important to understand exactly what's happening. And it's my job to share information with you that I think is important. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get to it. I write this article every week for what it's worth. Shout out to my friends at StatHead and Pro Football Reference. I cannot recommend them or their tools enough. It allows me to look things up relative to Dallas Cowboys franchise history and NFL history at large. If you see some of the tweets that I put out, things like that, they come thanks to their database. And so I'm very grateful to them and their partnership. But I write this article, and again, I was hopeful when I designed this series this past offseason that it would at least be based on an interesting season for the Cowboys, not necessarily a season from hell. It's called historical notes, and what I do was what I just said. I look at the game the Cowboys just played, and they're standing at that point or at this point in the season relative to team history, to franchise history, to NFL history, and we're going to go through some things that are rather dire and rather unfortunate. So first of all, talking about team history, Cooper Rush threw the ball 55 times on Monday Night Football against the Houston Texans. And what you're looking at right here is every single instance in Dallas Cowboys franchise history in which a quarterback threw the ball at least 55 times. You will notice as you look at the result that all of them are losses. Generally speaking, if you're throwing the ball that many times, it's not going to work out in your favor. This was a very different one than, Dak Prescott at Tampa Bay in the 2021 season opener, or certainly Dak Prescott against Cleveland. But these are all, I think, lost games. You think about that Tony Romo, these Tony Romo games, there are 3 of them here. There's actually one that is now 12 years old almost. Tomorrow, Friday, will mark the 12-year anniversary. That game was Thanksgiving Day, actually. Tony Romo and RG3, friend of Vlog on the Boys, dueling it out on Thanksgiving Day. Rookie RG3, rookie Alfred Morris. I recall that game vividly. I'm sure a lot of you do as well. I had many pieces of that game in my fantasy football league. That was the first I ever won my fantasy league of record. And so I remember it very, very vividly. But you don't want to be throwing the ball this many times. And look at the names on this list. This is all 8. All right. Troy Aikman only did this once, which again speaks to the way the NFL operated and has evolved, obviously, in the time after his retirement. But Troy Aikman's on this list once. Tony Romo's on this list 3 times. Dak Prescott's on this list 3 times. Okay. This was the 8th instance as noted. Okay. Again, we can sit here, we can argue, we can parse through whatever, but we all agree that Troy Aikman is in a company of his own. Tony Romo, Dak Prescott, very good. I think at the very least we can come to terms on that. My point is Cooper Rush is not anywhere in this air. All due respect to Cooper Rush, it is not necessarily a smart thing to ask Dak Prescott to throw the ball 55 times, to ask Tony Romo to throw the ball 55 times, to ask Troy Aikman to throw the ball 55 times. So if it's not a smart thing to ask each of them to do it, Mike McCarthy, bro, why are you designing or leaning into a game plan in which Cooper Rush is throwing the ball 55 times? I mean, my goodness gracious. Again, I think that the statistics kind of reflect, again, I don't mean to call out Cooper here, but he had the fewest amount of passing yards as far as anybody who did this. And again, that's not necessarily a perfect way to look at this, but just a notable thing. Now, he did throw for 354 yards, Cooper Rush did, and it marked the 50th instance, 50th time that a Dallas Cowboys quarterback has thrown for 350 yards. In case you're curious, these are all the quarterbacks who have done so. Dak Prescott has done it 17 times. That's the most in Dallas Cowboys franchise history. Will upset those of you who are Tony Romo stands, who only did it 11 times. Not saying that makes Dak better, but as you can see, only 5 players have done it multiple times. Cooper Rush, though, joins the list of Andy Dalton, Kellen Moore, Kyle Orton, John Kitna, Drew Bledsoe, Vinny Testaverde, and I bet you did not think you would hear the name Gary Hogaboom today. People who did it at least once for the Dallas Cowboys. But those are things relative to the game. We're here now to talk about kind of where the Cowboys are at relative to this point of the season. They're 3-7 and what they've accomplished, or what they haven't accomplished, I should say, to this point. So in case you did not know, the Dallas Cowboys have one rushing touchdown at home this season. They have played 5 games the Dallas Cowboys have so far in their home building. Just talking about this season for a moment here. And in those 5 games, they have 1 rushing touchdown. And it didn't even come from a running back. It came from Dak Prescott, all right? They didn't even get the 2-point conversion afterwards. It was just a mess. But anyway, my point is, in all of Dallas Cowboys franchise history, through the first 5 home games of any season, they have only had 1 or fewer rushing touchdowns. So fewer would be none. 2 times before this. This is it. This is the company that the 2024 Dallas Cowboys are in. In 2001, they accomplished this. And in 1988, they accomplished this. These are among the very worst seasons in Dallas Cowboys franchise history. Again, not bad seasons, not poor seasons, not seasons where they just missed the playoffs. These are among the bottom of the barrel. Again, a singular rushing touchdown through 5 games at home. It sounds impossible to accomplish, and it almost is. I mean, think about this. 3 times. Now, you're the third. This is the third. This is the 3rd instance of this phenomenon occurring, which is just unbelievable. Moving on, though, the Cowboys have lost 6 games at home in a row, obviously. And you have to date back to last year for this to be true, obviously. They've only lost the 5 games that they played this year. 5 is not 6. But dating back to the playoff loss against the Green Bay Packers. And I wrote this here, and I'm going to say it to you. I'm just going to read it to you. What I wrote was, including basically what I said was this Green Bay Packers playoff loss completely broke, dismantled, and disintegrated this franchise into an irrecoverable mess. And it did. And I think we all know this, and I think we've all said it already, but I do think that we need to continue to underscore it, that playoff loss broke this team. I mean, just beyond. I mean, it shattered them in a way that we're for a second here. Let me take this off your screen, because we have some more things that we're going to get into from a data perspective. Like I told you a moment ago, we're not talking about just a bad team. We're not talking about just, they missed the playoffs. It happens, regression to the mean. No, we're talking about quite literally one of the worst Dallas Cowboys teams of all time. Again, I'm not trying to exaggerate for effect. This is the things that I'm about to tell you they literally put them among the very worst company that has ever worn this uniform, that has ever played for this team. It is that bad for them right now. All right, let's get back to it. So the Cowboys have lost 6 games in a row at home. I didn't mean to just kind of, dance into this, but they've lost 6 games in a row at home, dating back to the Green Bay Packers playoff loss. The last game they won at home was December 30th of last year. It was that Saturday night game against the Lions, the night that cursed this team forever, apparently. This is now tied for the third longest losing streak at home ever in Dallas Cowboys franchise history. Ever. They've played in 3 different buildings, obviously, the Dallas Cowboys have across their long and storied history, which is really all they are right now, is just a historical, franchise. They're a museum at this point in time. But that being said, they have tied the 1960 version of themselves. There are several seasons that, that you don't want to be compared to or put in the same box as if you're the Dallas Cowboys. 1960 is one of them. All right. It was maybe their worst season as a franchise. It was their inaugural season. And so it's very difficult, obviously, to contend and compete in situations like that. But they have tied that team as far as, and again, it's worth mentioning that those losses all occurred in a singular season. I guess if you're, kind of splitting hairs in 1960, whereas now currently we are having to technically date back to last year. But I would offer, and I think you would agree, that currently it's worse given that it involved a playoff game. So 6 consecutive games, but that longest streak that you're seeing up there at the top from 1988 that rippled into 1989, because these do include multiple seasons as evidenced here. That late 80s run here is the longest that we have ever seen the Dallas Cowboys go on a streak of consecutive home game losses. It was 14 consecutive losses at home. All right. That was right before and then through the beginning of the Jerry Jones era of ownership. That being said, at that moment in time, the Dallas Cowboys were playing at Texas Stadium, not the Cotton Bowl, which was the case in 1960. So what we're kind of saying here, what I'm getting at, is in 2015, that horrible stretch that actually rippled into the first Dak Prescott Zeke Elliott game when Terrence Williams didn't go out of bounds. You remember that? Obviously, it was horrible. That was the longest losing streak at AT&T Stadium in that building's history. All right. What we are seeing now currently is the second. It's not tied for third. It's the second longest losing streak ever at home for the Dallas Cowboys at AT&T Stadium specifically. If you're curious, there are 4 home games left for the Cowboys, so they could beat that. They could establish the longest losing streak ever in this building's history. In order to do so, they'd obviously have to lose 3 more games. Up next for them, in case you're curious, their next 3 are the New York Giants at home on Thanksgiving. And I would argue that if they lose that one, this is going to happen, because after that, they get the Cincinnati Bengals on Monday Night Football. I know the Bengals are down bad, but they are such a better team than the Cowboys. And then it's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on December 22nd in a game that is sure to get flexed out of Sunday Night Football. So that's where they're at. This is something that I found to be absurd, to be quite honest with you. So the Cowboys have scored 6, 9, and 10 points. I think I'm getting that right in order, right? Let's see here. Yes, 9, 6, and 10 points in their last 3 games at home. They scored 9 points in the loss to the Detroit Lions. They scored 6 points in the loss at home to the Philadelphia Eagles, and they scored 10 points on Monday night in the loss to the Houston Texans. Those are their last 3 home games. So 10 points or fewer in their last 3 home games. What you're looking at right here are the last 10 teams who went 3 consecutive games in their home building scoring 10 or fewer points. Obviously, the Dallas Cowboys at the very top of this list because they're doing it at the moment. It's an active streak. That's why you see that asterisk there. This had not happened across the entire NFL in 5 years. Think about that. I mean, this is, and think about the teams that we're talking about here. That Dolphins team in 2019 was horrible. That Rams team in 2016, John Fossil was on that team too. That was the year he took over as interim head coach when Jeff Fisher was fired at the beginning of it. That 2015 Tennessee Titans team was horrible as well. That was Marcus Mariota's rookie year that led to them getting the number 1 overall pick that they would ultimately trade to the Jeff Fisher Rams. I mean, it's just, what we're seeing, this list of teams is horrendous that scored 10 or fewer points in 3 consecutive games at home. And I know that we're isolating things at home, and it's not to just pick on that. It's because they're so bad and this is a point that I've seen a lot of people make. And look, I get that it's not, I get that the Cowboys have burned up all benefit of the doubt and that they haven't won anything serious and all those kinds of things. I'm not here to, defend them in any way, shape, or form. But if you strip away the narrative, the Cowboys of it all, this is a team that was dominant. I mean, absolutely dominant in their home building for a very long time, for 3 years. Did they win every single game for 3 years from 2021 through 2023? No. But for the most part, they were incredibly dominant. So again, it's not just that they went from being incredibly dominant to regressing to the mean. They went from being incredibly dominant, not to the other end of the spectrum. They went from being incredibly dominant to literally one of the worst teams ever. I mean, it is amazing the fall off and the just dramatic dip that we have seen from this team that is explainable in a vacuum, but not to this degree. Again, I'm not gonna, sit here and tell you that I thought the Cowboys would win the Super Bowl, but I think we all thought that, especially based on the offseason and everything that it involved or didn't involve, that this was going to be a bad year. But to I don't again, you can hate on the Cowboys all you want, you can be down on them all you want, but there's nobody that foresaw them being this cataclysmically bad, which is the case obviously here. And if you don't believe me, this is the final note that I have for you on this front. So we talked about how they've gone 3 consecutive games at home, scoring 10 or fewer points. They are the only team in franchise history to do this. We talked about how no team across the NFL had done it since 2019. Those Miami Dolphins. No other Dallas Cowboys team has done this. None. Not a single Dallas Cowboys team has ever done this. No Dallas Cowboys team has ever scored 10 or fewer points in 3 straight games at home. Like I told you a moment ago, we are talking about quite literally one of the worst teams that this organization, this franchise has ever fielded. It isn't dramatic. It isn't hyperbole. It isn't exaggeration. It isn't being cute or cheeky or fun or silly or whatever the case may be, goofy. It is objective fact and truth at this point in time. It's unbelievable, but nevertheless, it's the case, and I can't quite believe it. I also don't know what's going on that's got Bear so upset. Goodness gracious. But a few more things to share with you before we completely move on and maybe try to have a good rest of the day. Those are historical notes and historical trends and historical data points. What I'm about to show you next are some of my tweets. It was just the easiest way to show you the information that come by way of NFL Pro, another fantastic subscription service. If you subscribe to NFL Pro, you get NFL Red Zone. It's how I watch the Red Zone channel. Thankfully, we have some opportunities to watch that coming up. We had it this past week with the Cowboys on Monday Night Football. Obviously, Dallas plays at noon on Sunday, which is a bit of a bummer. But after that, Thanksgiving Day, which means we get Red Zone on Sunday, and they won't even be in our lives, the Cowboys, and then Monday Night Football the week after. So we'll be seeing Scott Hanson soon enough. But that being said, let's take a look at a few of these tweets of mine, which I shared on Thursday. The Dallas Cowboys defense has allowed an NFL leading 21.9% explosive play rate and 10 yards per attempt when defending pass plays that involve pre-snap motion. We have been talking about for years, literal years, about how pre-snap motion short circuits this defense. And I don't understand why it's the case. I don't understand why they can't get over this bugaboo. And this really kind of broke my brain. So on pass plays that involve pre-snap motion, the Cowboys are allowing a 21.9% explosive play rate, which is the worst in the NFL, 10 yards per attempt, which is the worst in the NFL. On pass plays that do not involve pre-snap motion, their explosive play rate allowed is 9.5%, which is 6th. And their yards per attempt allowed is 5.8. We're talking about almost half. Or 40% less, right? What is it about this? What is it about the just involvement and usage and utilization of motion that just breaks this team? We're talking about different defensive coordinator, obviously a lot of the same parts as far as players and things like that, but it is absurd that pre-snap motion just sends them over the edge to where they are an irrecoverable mess. I don't understand it. I don't think anybody understands it. Again, this has plagued them for a very long time now. If you're a prop player, if you're a fantasy player, I talked about my fantasy league in 2012 a moment ago. The Dallas Cowboys defense has allowed an NFL high. Again, we're talking about, a very special team here. 12.7 yards after the catch per reception. Yards after the catch, not just yards in general, yards after the catch specifically to opposing running backs, the most by a defense since at least 2016. So if you are a prop player or a fantasy player, Austin Eckler is your man this week, ladies and gentlemen. Look, I don't know how many times to say it. I don't know how many ways to contextualize it. The Dallas Cowboys arrogantly thought that they could make Zeke Elliott a thing in 2024. They were the only people in the world who thought that that was a good idea. They have negative 143 rushing yards over expected. That means they are accomplishing negative 143 yards relative to what they should be accomplishing from a rushing perspective. They are the only team in the negative 100. The team closest to them is the Los Angeles Rams at negative 97. The Cowboys have only had more rushing yards than expected, which means they've over-delivered, overperformed, been better than expected twice in 10 total games this season. Once more, we're talking about a historically bad team. Now, this was the last thing that I wanted to get into because there are a lot of you out there who like to type in caps lock that Dak Prescott is the problem and Dak Prescott sucks. And I'm not really here to defend Dak. I'm just here to say that this team is broken. What you're reading is a tweet from me that says highest tight window throw percentages among NFL quarterbacks with at least 100 total pass attempts this season. There are 39 qualifying players. Number one on that list, the highest percentage belongs to Cooper Rush, who has started 2 games. All right, 2 games, and he's already at this mark, 22.2% of throws for Cooper Rush going into tight windows. Dak Prescott, number 2 on this list, 21.3%. This is, you can bicker all you want, you can argue all you want. I'm not here to say that Dak and Cooper Rush, whatever the case may be, what this is representative of, what this is emblematic of, is the offensive scheme, the offensive design that the Cowboys are deploying at this moment in time is completely broken. In fact, I would actually say it's completely lazy because we now have multiple quarterbacks. Again, I think we all would offer that Cooper Rush is at the very least serviceable. Again, I really hate to say things like that because it sounds like a demerit against Cooper, and I don't mean to be that way, but you get my point. That being said, we now have an enormous amount of data with different variables that proves that the Dallas Cowboys wide receiver group right now is not being put in positions to where they can create open windows for their quarterbacks to thrive and operate in. They're being put into windows where they're asking their quarterbacks, whether that's the guy you like or don't like in Dak Prescott or somebody else, to make magic, to make something happen, to pull a rabbit out of a hat. This is insane that both of the Dallas Cowboys quarterbacks are in this group right now. They're being asked, they're being tasked, they're being forced to be incredibly, inordinately aggressive. And when you do things like that, you're a bad football team. And look, again, I'm not going to sit here and make excuses for Dak or make excuses for Cooper Rush. But what I am going to sit here and say is that this is a very, 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 very flawed team. Not because they've allowed so many yards or because they've scored 10 or fewer points in 3 straight games at home, because the way they were built, the way they continue to operate, the way they continue to exist as a franchise, as a football team, as an organization is so broken and is so, prehistoric relative to every other team in the NFL that they're setting everybody up for failure, which is why, again, what we're seeing here isn't just a bad football team. We're watching one of the worst teams, one of the worst seasons in this storied franchise's history. It is the toughest of tough scenes. So, yeah, it was either this or, again, what do you think that, Terry McLaurin's going to be able to do against this defense? It was either this or that. So I think that I made the right decision. I hope that you agree. My name is RJ Ochoa. Once more, you know where to find me. Follow me on social media. I'll put all the links down below. Thank you so much for your time. It's a very busy weekend for me in my house, but I will make sure to have lots of content for you. We've got our Madden simulation dropping on Friday. We've got Dallas Cowboys and Espanol dropping on Saturday. And then on Sunday, immediately following the game, I'll be live in the Bleacher Report app for a live post-game show. We'll turn around as soon as that's over. We'll get that up here on the channel as well for you. But if you do want to watch it live, download the Bleacher Report app. You can follow me there as well. I'll put the link for that down in the, I think I could put the link for that. I'll try down in the description below. You'll get, even if you don't follow me in the Bleacher Report app, you'll get an alert. You can watch, you can comment, you can chime in. And you can, like I said, if you don't watch it live or whatever the case may be, we'll throw it up here for you after the fact. Yeah, I do want to say, because this is the last time I'll actually kind of talk to you in English, at least before the game on Sunday, that Sunday is my son's 3-year-old third birthday, and he is the light of my life. I'm just, so many of you have been with me in the journey of, a lot of you have been around for a long time in my career. Before I was married, before my wife and I had a son, and those of you that were around then or made stops and came back, whatever the case may be, everybody said that being a dad would be the best thing. And I just want to say you were all so right. It is the best. And I am just so happy and so blessed and so grateful and so thankful. And so looking forward to a fun weekend with him and fun weekend kind of talking about the Cowboys, I suppose, if that's even possible at this point in time. I don't think it really is, but somehow, some way, we'll find a way to make lemonade out of this whole situation. So I hope you have a great weekend, whatever you're doing. Like I said, Madden simulation on Friday, Dallas Cowboys and Espanol on Saturday. Post game coming, should be up on the channel at least on Sunday. I would say maybe about 4:30-ish, 4:30 Central, kind of about halftime of the afternoon games. But if I don't see you between now and then, hope you have a wonderful weekend. Go get your groceries, whatever you got to do before Thanksgiving Day, because next week's going to be hectic, and that doesn't even include the Dallas Cowboys. So thanks so much for hanging out, everybody. We will see you next time, and I love you all.